Good afternoon and welcome to Report Out. So actually, the first one I'm kind of linked to anyway, but they're always brilliant opportunities to hear what's happening across the organisation in terms of the LIM work that everyone's doing. So Claire hopefully will be along shortly. So my name's Rowena Tyndale, for those of you that don't know me, and I'm the Chief Nurse. And as each member of our team talk through this presentation, they'll introduce themselves. So this presentation is about us wanting to reduce complaints by enhancing patient care and experience, and we chose this because our complaints and feedback that we've been getting from patients kind of indicated that perhaps our communication levels and that civility wasn't as good as it could be, and what we wanted to do was kind of reset that care delivery LTHT through these complaints and feedback, and kind of really apply a customer care focus and ethos that you might see in organisations that are not the NHS. So, for example, the service industry, restaurants, airlines, etc. So, I'm going to hand over to Sarah Kehoe.
So, I'm just going to actually introduce myself first of all. Sarah Kehoe, Deputy Chief Nurse. And actually, I will signpost this slide to my colleague Tans in a moment, who will take you through this data analysis with you. But primarily we're here today to really kind of focus in on how we can enhance customer care and the patient experience across the organisation. And we will tell you how we have done that through a small project to get us to the point of initiating this going forward. So handing over to you, Tans, thank you.
Thanks everyone. Hi everyone, my name is Tans Pinder. I'm the lead nurse and the chief nurse in CSU. So we came in with an agenda that actually we really want to work on some of our themes, especially sub-themes that we are facing from our patient complaints, which are communication, and it was quite broad, and we really had to narrow down what we wanted to draw and sort of work our succession plan on with. And one of the key areas that came through was communication, predominantly with our medical, nursing and administrative workforce. And there's lots of new change coming within the organisation around NMAP and the medical workforce. And we've decided to start our scale small, focusing on our administrative teams who make a massive difference within our organisation and are the front door, especially in bed-based facing CSUs and bed-holding CSUs. So you can see the data here, especially the data around communication and staff interaction. We've got a lot of work to do. So I'm going to hand over to Sarah Hambridge, who may want to give a bit more insights to the data collection and the ethos that we're driving from.
Thank you, Tans. So I'm Sarah Hambridge. I'm the Chief Clinical Information Officer, Nursing, Midwifery and AHP. So we're just starting to work with Microsoft. We're forming a relationship in terms of using our current tenant, as in Microsoft Teams, to start looking at that first level engagement around communication. So we will be starting off small scale. We'll predominantly look at the staff in the first phase, with the view in the second phase to starting integrating with our patients, carers and relatives. So this is quite innovative, to be fair, and it's a systemic problem across the NHS. It's not just pertinent to Leeds Teaching Hospital. And actually, with this piece of work, we could be working with NHS England, and this could predominantly be an NHSE blueprint for other organisations. So it's really exciting. It's innovative. Like I say, it's really in its infancy and its early stages, but we will be starting this piece of work at the end of January. We'll be working collaboratively and collectively with all our specialities and our roles within nursing, midwifery and HP, and using the data to inform us of how we can really reduce the complaints, improve our patient experience and patient outcomes. And obviously the patient will be pivotal to driving some of this as the key stakeholders. So I will hand over to Sarah now. Sarah Kehoe.
Thanks, Sarah. Yeah, I think it's also to focus in terms of kind of, our trust kind of commitments and how this project impacts on our 7 commitments through the list that we see here, such as reducing wait for our patients, being the top 25% performing trust for staff retention. And we've really listened to the voice of staff, and we've really listened to the voice of patients as we've walked the walks and spoken to both staff and patients in terms of how it feels out there and what you think is required. And, you know, in terms of when we look at kind of the workforce groups across the organisation, how can we improve communication collectively together in what is a challenging NHS? You know, lots of things going on daily, isn't there? Lots of adversity to face and challenge, and we want to support that. So in terms of looking at workforce groups, we wanted to kind of hear first line what our admin staff were feeling like and what support we could give to kind of focus on that patient experience, and staff experience indeed is at the centre of all we do. So this slide is one of our driver diagrams, which is in accordance with the LIM methodology, of course. And what this does describe is actually how we got to where we've got. So in terms of a pre-audit, we looked at our customer care audit details from our complaints experience team. And we've obviously looked and focused on in terms of where we could improve our interactions as such together. But in terms of going forward, I'm going to hand you over to Tans at this point and Sarah Hambridge, who are going to collectively discuss this driver diagram and how we've used the data analysis that we've conducted to get to this point of seeing where the gap analysis is and how we can collectively take this project forward. Over to you, Sarah and Tans. Thank you.
Thank you. I'll come in here, everyone. My name is Tans once again. I think it was really important to recognise actually where the gaps were and appreciating that financially we maybe not have the surplus to support some of the innovative ideas that we wanted to use. So we went back to the drawing board and looked at some of the sunk costs that we have, and within the organisation really wanted to maximise our educational footprint that we already have within our workforces and recognise where the administrative are not getting the opportunity. So we've taken a two-tier approach with education and training around customer care, human factors, how to resolve complaints when they happen in the moment, live in the moment within the ward areas. And what we've recognised is that actually all our administratives within the organisation don't get any training when they join the organisation. So how are we going to capture that without creating or using a more financial cost? So we're going to utilise all the training we have. So the new human factor training, conflict resolution management training led by OL, and professional development, who are focusing on the new agenda of early career education and fostering the 6 C's and embedding the 6 C's into our current workforce that's actively providing care to our patients. And then the second tier approach we've taken is to introduce introduction to professional practice for unregistered staff. So we've never had that in the organisation. We aim to launch that within April, new financial year, within the workforce and education team. And what we're trying to do is optimise what we have in the organisation, but to also maximise cultivating clinical antibody within our organisations, really focusing on quality care and that commitment to simple communication and not letting complaints just go on day on day on. So I'll hand over to Sarah Hambridge, who's going to talk about some of the digital impacts that we're putting.
Yeah, so I think what was really interesting from this driver diagram and the analysis work that we did, it was how do we start to use technology really to embed in our day-to-day business activity. So as we know, finances are not great, and we're trying to optimise as many systems that we've got across the organisation. So hence why we've decided to work with Microsoft on this piece of work of how can we use our Microsoft Office 365 in terms of messaging, having a clear audit trail and communication trail, and then probably later down the line in probably phase 2, we can start to integrate that and build that into our PPM Plus platform and really start to collect the data and the information that's informing us around patient experience and patient outcomes. And we've got that collective data and information then that we can then put into education and training, as Tanzin's rightly said, to inform our practice of where we need to focus our attention and our energies to make sure that we are reducing complaints and meeting expectations. Because I think currently we are working in a parallel process of we're not quite there in terms of technology and hardware and software, so we're kind of battling that, but we also need to be creative and innovative, and it's how do we bring those two worlds together and try and optimize what we've currently got in terms of financial commitment. and hopefully long-term strategy in terms of the patient portal as well. So we're trying to build this big picture of our communication, how we are interacting with our patients in terms of virtual wards, virtual clinics. There's a plateau of things that we're currently doing, but are we actually joining the digital dots up? Are we connecting that information? And have we got that visualization? And are we optimizing it to our full capability to support our patients and also our staff actually in terms of morale and performance, and making sure that we're delivering the best care possible? So that's a really small snapshot of the work that we've done today, and it's going to be really exciting. But I am going to bring Rabina in at this point, because Rabina was really keen to kind of give her perspective as well around the volunteers aspect. So I'll hand you over to Rabina.
Thanks, Sarah. So we want to, within LTHT, increase our volunteer offer and open the possibility of volunteering up to our communities. And one of the things that we, as I said before, in terms of the aviation industry or restaurants, you're greeted when you first go into that environment, whereas our wards are so busy, and particularly at visiting time, what we found that some complainants were telling us that actually, there was nobody to be seen. Everybody's really busy, couldn't get information about relatives. And what we're trialling here is a concept whereby we have volunteers on a number of wards as a pilot at visiting times, who can be there to greet patients, but also be the conduit for contact, be able to get further information, link them up with a member of staff who they might want to speak to, so that there's almost a little bit of an appointment system, so that not everybody is queuing at the nurse's station or wanting to speak to the nurse in charge. And that will impact positively on staff, because it kind of reduces that stress level, but it also is a better experience for patient experience, as well as allowing us to efficiently, in the current financial climate, utilise volunteers who are an absolute asset within the organisation.
Thank you, Rabina. So how are we going to do that? So, I mean, obviously, the project initially was quite ambitious. We've really kind of tailed this down because we need to start somewhere. So somewhere would be, greeting our visitors at the front door on visiting time would be a great starting point. And many of our admin staff are the first first patient-facing staff that would say hello to our patients on arrival, and our visitors and guests and clients and families. So really what we do, we need to get that baseline. We know the baseline currently is on average we have 2,345 complaints, and we wanted to try and reduce that target to obviously around 15% cut on that. So if we took the baseline currently, that'd be 1,993. We also want to try and get a target of 100% that we're greeting relatives at the door on arrival at visiting times with support of our volunteering staff, and of course our staff that are able to do so when possible. What is really interesting about data collection, this is a really, really valid point to make, is that actually within LTHT we don't provide any standardised customer care training, and I think primarily, having spoken to some of our administration staff, that would be really greatly valued. So we've heard what you want, and this is where we will begin. We want to give you the tools and the confidence to have those conversations, some difficult conversations sometimes, and to manage situations that sometimes do arise within our daily working lives together. And of course, the morale of staff is so important. We're just collecting that data currently at the baseline depth, so I can't share that with you just yet. But I think going forward, the journey in terms of the next 6 to 12 months, we'd like to come back here and report out the output of this work and share those successes with you. But a really exciting opportunity, and really fortunate our Chief Nurse, Rabina, is fully supportive of this also.
Great, thanks. Tans, we're running over, so a minute please for your next slide, and then we'll wrap up. Thank you.
Thank you, Rabina. I think it's really important to just celebrate what's gone really well, and I think within LTHT, It's not just about the NMAP workforce. We're really committed to our people and the NHS People Promise. It's been really, really wonderful to see how engaged our administrative teams have been. They've been open and honest that they want to be part of the improvement work, and sometimes they're probably not the first people we come to, and that's been delightful. They're really engaged. They want to be a part of the change, the movement. They openly want to make a positive impact to our patients and their relatives. So our strategies are small scale, but they are going to have a massive impact. We obviously want to make sure that we are working and are aligned to the 7 commitments. One of them to be reducing patient waits, especially in bed-based CSUs where family members are staggered up within the nurses' station. If we had the opportunity and the time and the commitment, what we would have done differently is to be able to spend a day in the life within a ward clerk's shoes in a really busy ward area. We've not had the opportunity to do that, but we're hopeful when we come back in 12 months, we're able to showcase that we've done that, and also to be able to capture live patient feedback and to interject and make those positive changes without it becoming a pulse complaint. So they are some of our key things that we would have done differently, but really want to hone in the celebration of our administrative staff being extremely engaging and value them as a profession within the organisation. Hand over to Rabina to finish off.
Great, thanks for that, Tan. So we are overrunning. I think normally we take questions at the end. So if we move on to the next presentation then, please. Thank you, team.
Hi, good afternoon. Can you all hear me? Hope so. Yeah, great. My name's Cheryl. I'm an occupational therapist here at the LGI under the cardiology and specialist surgery team. My core bulk of my clinical work is spent with lower limb amputees in the vascular service. Can I do the next slide? Yes, I could do it myself. Lovely. So the problem identified really occurred many, many years ago when the vascular service merged with Mid Yorkshire in 2015, I believe. Yes. So basically what happened is that we were receiving all the patients for lower limb amputations with an idea that the patients from Mid Yorkshire would repatriate back to Wakefield and Dewsbury services. And our therapy staffing wasn't actually increased as a result. However, our caseload did increase massively from about 50 patients per year to 120 that we've seen in our bed bases. And all these patients do become wheelchair users, as you would expect. What we were finding, though, however, is that patients were massively delayed being repatriated, as I imagine anybody who works in that area would experience. They may be medically and functionally ready to go home, but actually the homes have not been assessed to be discharged home for safety reasons. So they're spending a lot more time in a medical bed than they needed to be. As well, alongside that, as a result of the patients all coming to us, the OTs that would normally work with these patients in Pinderfields were kind of losing their skills as well, and there was no longer a specialist ward there. The patients were actually getting transferred to a diabetic ward. So it was all becoming a little bit of a mess. We had a bulk of patients who were delayed repatriating. We had some that were refusing to be repatriated. They were refusing to wait. They were going home at risk. So we were trying to think kind of what we could do. And unfortunately, as I say, because our staffing wasn't increased, we couldn't offer these face-to-face visits in the Mid Yorkshire area. Some patients lived 32 miles away. You know, it just wasn't feasible. And then the option of virtual visits came to my mind, I suppose. So we all were getting more versed in doing video calling with friends and relatives. Various digital resources were cropping up where we could have that facility. So where we'd maybe got photographs and just measurements before, we were actually saying, well, can we actually look at this face to face, if you like, over a digital platform? So for those who would be able to go home because therapy had been completed, we deemed them safe to go home, had their property been assessed, we looked at virtual visits. So the visits that we are talking about we're looking at wheelchair access, door widths, furniture heights, major adaptations, equipment, anything that would make a patient safe at home. These visits, if we completed them, would take upwards of about 2 hours, as you can imagine, in travel time, given the distance. We didn't have a designated vehicle at the time, so there'd have been an additional cost. So to do it this way was really kind of innovative and different. So patients had to be on board with the fact that we wouldn't be able to do a discharge visit with them. So as I say, these were the really functional, otherwise independent, good, solid patients that could be discharged home safely this way. So I initially started it on WhatsApp, and then I moved to Attend Anywhere kind of during COVID time, I guess. So we're going back some time that I was initially playing about with this, but I'll explain why it's only now that it's come to the forefront in a little while. So the outcome was that if we look at, for example, the last financial full year, it was very successful. Of the 56 patients that we took into LGI from the Mid Yorkshire area, 24 were discharged home direct from the LGI. And just to note that not all the patients that we had of those 56 would have been appropriate for the virtual visits, maybe because their rehab needs were far beyond a safe discharge home. They may have needed rehousing, first-time placement, package of care, major equipment, things like that. So we're talking about the ones that we felt reassured would be safe to go home. As a result, we feel it's improved patient experience because people obviously being discharged via the LGI, not having to wait, go to Pinderfields, have assessments, then go home. As a result, so this one's a bit hypothetical because we weren't doing the visits, but had we been doing them, we've saved 38 hours of time going to the patient's property. Obviously, there is still a time element that we've now taken on board because the virtual visits do take some, obviously, time to do. But 38 hours saved for that group of patients. Cost saving of staffing of £813, which sounds a small amount, but we're ramping this up. Again, because it's work that we didn't previously do that we're doing, it's not a full saving. And then 2,671 on taxi spends had we been going out to these properties to do face-to-face visits. But this next figure is really where the impact has been. So just for that group of patients, we estimate we've saved 154 total bed days just within our site. We have statistics that show that patients wait on average 6 days to be repatriated, but actually that's an average. Some were waiting up to 2 weeks to be repatriated, and sometimes solely for the reason of home assessment and continued rehab. A calculation of the cost of a bed stay times 154 days comes out at £90,000 of saving. And that's just on our site. That's not including the time that they would have spent in Pinderfields as well for this assessment to be complete and the treatment to be complete. So following this, we've rolled it out massively. We're now doing it across Leeds patients as a first point of call. It's not that we're saying, right, Leeds patients will get face-to-face, Mid Yorkshire's get the virtual. We're offering as first point of call for all visits. This figure's a little bit out of date because my slide's a little bit historic. So I was looking just before this presentation of we've had 115 amputees in this last financial year through our caseload, and 48 of which have got home via virtual environmental visits. So again, ramping it up a little bit more. Of those 115, 52 were actually from the Mid Yorkshire area, and 28 got home this way of those. And we've only actually repatriated 13 lower limb amputees since last April. And the only reason we repatriated them actually was because they were referred during our busiest months where we had 20 on our caseload, and it just wasn't feasible to be all things to all men, if you like. So what went well? I suppose the improvement of technology to enable these visits. So like the Attend Anywhere during COVID, the more acceptance that we could do these consultations remotely rather than face-to-face, which would always probably have deemed as being the gold standard. The idea was really received well by patients as well, so they're really engaged with it. They saw lots of benefits of being not only involved themselves with the process, because obviously you can actually do it at patient's bedside with them there where they wouldn't traditionally be there, but also with the relatives as well, the convenience of, well, I can do it before I take my children to school, or I can do it when I personally wouldn't have normally gone out, and you know, it extends the working day of when you can do these things. Obviously some patients who would have patients who would have previously been self-discharged or at risk, or prolonged waits for repatriation, you know, that's all been resolved really. And the engagement in the wider teams has been brilliant since this has been rolled out more as well. So what would I do differently? Well, obviously, initially, as I said, I did it on WhatsApp, and that leaves a bit of a blueprint of your number. So we did find in its infancy, sometimes I'd get that little wee call a few weeks later saying, you saw my dad, and this and this, can you fix it? And I was like, no, who are you? I can't remember, and no. So with the Attend Anywhere platform, that's kind of fixed that problem. I'd probably be a little bit more vocal in what I was doing. I think I'm going to try and get this light back on. Sorry, it's on a sensor. There we go. They can see me again. A little bit more vocal about what I was doing. I think because, as I say, face-to-face feels like the gold standard. It feels like what you should do. I thought I was working off a little bit off the grid, but I suppose that's where some of the best ideas are created, when you just try something a bit different. I'd probably benchmark, and I probably still plan to benchmark with other areas and seeing, like, you know, we've all been using some digital resources for a while now. How are you finding that? Pitfalls, advantages, etc. And just to discuss a little bit more about what I'm doing if they're not doing it already. So yeah, doing things a little bit different would have been engaging, I suppose, the digital teams a bit sooner about what platforms I could have used, and then using the data. So I've always kept data. I'm a bit of a data person, but I don't think I recognised really the savings that I was making, the financial savings and the impact. I could see the human impact, but I couldn't necessarily see the financial impact and the bed stay impact. So that's been really quite enlightening. So the next steps, these have kind of moved on from, again, when these slides were written. So it's rolled out within my team, my vascular team. So my band 6, my band 5s, my rotational band 5 will do virtual visits. So it's about, you know, training people and getting that word out. I've actually met with every occupational therapy team across the trust now as well, to tell them about the work that I'm doing. Now I'm in the limelight, and I think it's been embraced as a service. So again, it's got more applications than just what I'm doing. We do, as IoTs, environmental visits for many reasons. It can be for a hoist, a space for a bed, major adaptation, ramping, just basic rails sometimes, or telling a relative how to fit some equipment that we would have traditionally gone out to do. So it's got lots of applications if, you know, people then start embracing this as an option. As I say, patients can be more involved moving forwards at the bedside. So if we're making changes, radical changes to their home, and they're not in a position of power, I suppose, of being in their hospital bed, being vulnerable, they can be there linked up with us to say, right, we're going to move your beds into that place, or we're going to fit this there, and we're going to do that. You know, I think that's a real positive move. I think people are starting to see the benefits, as I've touched on, of, you know, it mitigates the lone working problems sometimes. So people who start earlier can do these, people who finish later can do these, where traditionally they would be saying, well, I'm not going out on a visit too late because I'm going to be coming back on my own, and, you know, where's the safety net of that? And it meets some of the relatives' expectations as well. So if, you know, relatives are over in mid Yorkshire, can't, you know, travel easily or whatever, or meet us, you know, if they're traveling to the relative's house to meet us, then, you know, we can work around things a little bit more in timings. And then Amy as well reminded me of the green aspect. So we're not getting in the car often, we're not being petrol heads, we're doing this literally from the comfort of our desks, really. I think that's probably about it in a nutshell.
Great, thank you, Cheryl. So we're actually just at 1 o'clock, so we won't have time for questions, but I'll just quickly sum up. Cheryl, brilliant project. I mean, you know, the metrics and the outcomes in terms of the efficiency and patient experience is phenomenal. And the fact that it started as such a small idea and you can show the passion to grow it, so well done. And I feel a bit biased and a bit of a conflict of interest, because obviously the first presentation was my team, but thank you to them. Again, a really worthy project, which is going to have significant benefit for both patients and our staff. Thank you very much for joining. Have an amazing weekend, everyone, and we'll see you next Friday. Thank you. Bye.